Hello everybody and welcome to another week of Fast Talkers, the show where we discuss everything that matters in the paddock, out the paddock, around the paddock and at home, wherever you are. And I'm delighted to say I have three very eager and willing and knowledgeable guests to bring to the show for you today. The first I will start with is Will Buxton. Will is the F1 digital presenter and is known for having an opinion about, I think, almost everything. Is that fair to say, Will?
I wouldn't like to say. Thanks for having me on.
You are more than welcome. Next up, we have Natasha Henry, freelance broadcaster and journalist. Natasha, I just wondered, we'll talk about it more in depth in a moment, but race one of the 2020 season, how good did you think it was?
I don't know if it was just the excitement that F1 was back, but I think it was a lot better than we all expected it to be, definitely.
Yes, I think I'm in agreement as well. So exciting. And our last but not least, our final guest is Gianluca Gasparini, who is the editor-in-chief of motorsport at Gazzetta dello Sport. That's quite a long title, very important, but mostly it's just lovely to see you. How are you?
I'm fine. And as you can see, it's hard to believe, but I'm working. I'm at the newspaper because the lockdown has eased a lot in Italy. And the only available room was this, so you can't mistake which newspaper I work for behind me. But it's a pleasure to join you guys.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here and representing the Italians, because there's going to be plenty to speak about in the next half hour.
Yes.
It's been a busy time. We will start, if that's okay with everybody, to talk about Austria, because race one just happened. What a race it was. And Will, let's start with you. Did it live up to all of your expectations, which might have been lofty?
It did. I think the surprise in podium places, the excitement towards the end, the multiple strategies, the safety cars, the high rate of attrition, it sort of had a little bit of everything. And it was such an unusual weekend. There was so much trepidation going into it. We weren't sure how everything would work, you know, under these new sort of COVID restrictions and you know, the sort of the social distancing, how the podium procedures, how anybody would actually do their jobs within the garages as well. And it all went off pretty, I mean, I'm not going to say without a hitch, but pretty well. It felt very normal for sort of an abnormal weekend.
Because out of all of us, you were the only one actually at the track. So just tell us, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is the nasal and throat swab?
Honestly, it's horrible. I think I've had 3 or 4 of them now. And the one at the track is by far and away the worst I've ever had. I think they probably scraped some of my brain out with the last, they go right up. Yeah, it's pretty grim. But, you know, we go through it because you have to keep everybody in the paddock safe. Make sure that you are safe yourself, and you know, going through this small little bit of, you know, discomfort allows this sport to get back. It means that we can do so responsibly, and most importantly, it means that when we get home we can see our families, and that's really key. And we're not spreading anything, you know, around the world. So all the precautions that have been put in place are fantastic. You know, you fail a test, you miss a test, your pass is wiped. You don't get into that paddock. It's absolutely regimented. So they're taking huge steps to make sure that, you know, the first international sporting event to get back underway in the world, you know, it has been done so responsibly.
Yeah, over 4,000 tests have taken place already between, I think it was only in a week's time. So it shows how many people it takes to actually make Formula One work. Gianluca, when it comes to Gazzetta, you do have someone on the ground, but not you.
No. It's a colleague of mine, Luigi Perna, who usually follows Formula One at the track. It was quite an experience because he had to stay in the press room for 4 days. He worked mainly by phone because there was no way to speak or to talk with people from the team, especially in a weekend which was particularly difficult at the beginning for Ferrari. And we were trying to know what was behind this debacle in some way until qualifying. So it was not easy, but for us, it was very important to be there because we we thought it was a way to support Formula One in his start again this year. And it was important to be there to be witness of what was going on, in our opinion. So we went there with Luigi, and he did a very good job, actually.
Yeah, under difficult circumstances
Yes.
for everybody. And yeah, having to stay in a media centre for 4 days, not have access to drivers, to press conferences that we're all so used to is a very challenging practice.
Yes.
Natasha, does it make you quite pleased hearing of all these experiences that you weren't at the track for the first race?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be there. I don't think I'd be a fan of the swabs. It just, but like Will said, it's a necessary evil, isn't it? It's about the wider world and the safety of people's health and their families' health above anything else. But I think it would have been a really weird experience. So part of me would want to be there to know what it would have been like. And obviously with football, there's no fans in the stadium. It's like a ghost town. So I would have liked to have experienced that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there's lots of different elements for everybody. Natasha, when it comes to a first race, what did it deliver and what did it fail to deliver for you?
I think definitely as a journalist perspective, it delivered narratives and battles on the track and stuff for us to write about until the next race. Because sometimes you can have a race and it's like 2 days later, there's not really anything else to say about it. So I think the amount of conversation that's come from the race has been great. I think we were worried about, some people worried about the drivers being, you know, a bit out of practice, but it seems like the cars were the problem, and the drivers were so keen to get back, and you could see that on track. You could see how people were disappointed when they were crashing out, and you know, I mean, poor Alex Albon, you know, gutted for him again. But I think it was a great first race, and I think given we don't know how many races we're going to have this season, I think if we get 8 races like that, I'll be more than happy.
Gianluca, what do you think?
Well, it was quite exciting at the end. Obviously, the appearance of safety car for 3 times changed a lot about the situation, because otherwise Mercedes would have gone pretty much undisturbed. Of course, the reliability on this kind of circuit for Mercedes was a key factor, and they had a fair amount of problem, actually. So it happened that Alex Albon tried to recover, and then he was quite able to, almost able to pass Lewis. But the surprise was the Red Bull reliability, actually, because we thought that given the 2 wins that Max Verstappen had in this circuit in the last 2 years, we expected them to be at least reliable. But the race was good, and in the end, who played the cards in the better way won. Obviously, Valtteri Bottas was in a league of his own, and without making mistakes, it was impossible to beat him.
Yeah, Mercedes do look scarily dominant once again, but there are definitely weaknesses there, Will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're fragile. We saw it all the way through testing with the power unit, but now it's the gearbox as well. And the team has said there's no quick fix on this. I think what was really interesting is how good Valtteri was, how he took his opportunity in qualifying, how he absolutely had a grip all the way through the race. And even when the radio called, before there were any gearbox issues, the radio call came to the guys, look, we're going to turn your engines down soon. So they said to Lewis, if you want to make your move, you've got to make it now. And he did. And every time he cut the gap back to 3-4 tenths, Valtteri just pulled it back out again to 8 or 9 tenths. He had the complete measure of Lewis for the day. And it's not often we see that. Valtteri's come back, and I think he's put his intention down for the championship early. And in the season when, as everyone said, we don't know how many races we'll have. If it's 8 or 18, you have to take every opportunity when it presents itself in this kind of a season.
Yeah, so it's obviously good news for Valtteri Bottas. He leads the championship. He's in front of his teammate Lewis Hamilton. It's the ideal platform for him to launch his campaign. And it does give you slight echoes of 2016 when it was Rosberg, Hamilton. Hamilton had reliability issues and Rosberg just got the upper hand. How much of this is a reliability battle, do you think? And how much, Natasha, is this psychological for Valtteri Bottas to beat Hamilton?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. There's been a lot of talk over the weekend about Bottas's personal life, and even watching him on screen, he did just seem to have an air about him, a calmness and a happiness that he possibly hasn't had in other seasons. And I always think if you're happy in your personal life, it's so much easier to transfer that onto track. I feel like he trusts the team. You can see that both drivers trust the team, which is why they've worked so well together for so long. So I think any reliability issues, he's going to ignore that. He knows as long as he goes out and does his job and holds off Lewis, because that is the aim for every driver on track, then he can achieve, who knows what he can achieve. Because if we have 8 races, are they going to make him fall back for Lewis? Can they really justify doing that? It could be an open field this season.
You make, if I can jump in, you make a really interesting point there about Valtteri being content and happy in his personal space. You know, all the teams are allowed a very limited staff, and it's got to be essential crew only. And Valtteri is the only driver that had his girlfriend with him at the weekend. So essential that he consider her to the makeup of the team. She's essential staff, you know, or an essential member of the team. And that's huge, you know, that he has that grounding. And I think you're absolutely right. It's put him on such a good plane.
Gianluca?
Yes, for me it's a kind of movie. I don't agree totally with you guys, because in my opinion we have already seen last year Valtteri starting with, you know, he was strong and willing to show that he was capable of beating Lewis. And we said, oh, he's a different Valtteri and so on. But in my opinion, played a lot the circumstances with Lewis had to face from Saturday, because he missed the pole for a small amount. He got the penalty. Then he came back. He was penalized again with the incident with Alex, which in my opinion, I guess he did what he needed to do. He didn't do anything wrong, because if you look at the steering wheel, it didn't move for a millimeter. So, but that does not mean that Valtteri did a very, very, very good job from Saturday on. But, you know, already last year in Melbourne, we saw him beating fair and square Lewis. And then during the season, he had some up and down. Well, the point that Will said, it's the season, we don't know how long it will be. So it can be 8 races, 10 races. So the points you gain at the beginning are very, very important. And on this respect, the 0 that Max Verstappen summed up on Sunday is very, very important in a negative way.
Just quickly to talk about the incident with Albon and Hamilton. Penalty, we've already heard from Gianluca. Natasha first, then Will. Was it fair, 5-second penalty for Hamilton?
I feel it was a bit harsh. I feel that I like Alex Albon, but I think he's got that impatience of youth sometimes when you watch him race. And he left Lewis in a situation where what else could he do? It was either you go or we both go, which I think anyone would have done the same in Lewis's situation. It's unfortunate for Albon, but I do think it was harsh on Lewis, definitely.
Will?
I think given that 5 seconds was the minimum penalty that you give out in those kind of situations, it was probably the right penalty to give Lewis. I think there's maybe a bit of emotion that comes into those kind of decisions, given it's so similar to what happened in Brazil and Albon on for a charge for a podium, maybe even a win. And that could come into it, you know, a little bit, that emotion. But I think in terms of, you know, as Alex said, you know, he put his car in that place, and it was Lewis's front left to Albon's rear right. Yeah, Alex had the corner 1. It was his by rights. And true, you know, Lewis didn't open the wheel into him. There was no change in the position at all. But as the corner is naturally tightening to the right there, you'd imagine Lewis would have pulled over a little bit more. I don't know. It's like maybe just Lewis's fault in a racing incident perspective. But not much in it. The bigger issue now, though, is after Brazil, after this, Lewis is racking up those penalty points, and another foul up, he could be looking at a race ban.
Yeah, so he's got 7 points now. You have to get 12, and then you within the course of 12 months, and then you get a suspension. Do you honestly think he could be that close to it, Will?
I mean, who knows? You know, he makes another mistake like that, and you know, it's millimeters. One more mistake like that, and he's on the cusp of getting a race ban, and that would have to go all the way through to when was Brazil? Was it November last year? I can't even remember. It seems like a year. But yes, you know, so we've got until November. Who knows how many races we're going to have up until November? But yeah, one more mistake, and he's on the edge.
So basically, Lewis is on a bit of a yellow card at the moment. Sitting on the good step is, I would say, Charles Leclerc. I don't even know how he managed to drag that Ferrari round to get a second place podium. And I suppose this is a larger discussion really about Ferrari. And of course, I'm going to come to you, Gianluca, because you're in Italy. Gazzetta dello Sport has to report on Ferrari all the time. What do the Italians expect from Ferrari?
Well, we knew, and the Ferrari fans knew that it would have been a difficult beginning of the season. Binotto played down the expectation a lot. They knew that from Momelo test that they don't have a great car. And I think they know that this situation is going on for this year, maybe next year too. And this is the reason, in my opinion, because they didn't make an offer to Sebastian Vettel. But maybe we talk about Sebastian later. The problem is they expected not to be at Mercedes level and Red Bull level. What they didn't expect on Saturday on qualifying was to be in the league of Renault and McLaren. And they got scared a little bit. On Sunday, well, in my opinion, Leclerc's talent was much better than the car, and he was able to do the right move. He got a bit of luck, of course, in safety car and the situation, but he did a couple of great moves in the race, overtaking maneuver very, very, you know, like Ricciardo style, if you want. And he gained a couple of positions, and then he was, in the end, he was there, and it's a great merit. It's kind of miracle he did, but you know, and maybe reliability played a role in this too, because Ferrari was slow, but he was kind of very, very reliable at the end, and he was pretty fast when it needed. And we'll see. We'll have a kind of we'll see on Sunday, because they are bringing some different parts, small parts, because they said, okay, in Austria we are not competitive, but we are working a lot to Budapest. And then yesterday they said, but we have already small things to bring to the second race in Celtic. So let's see what happens. And with a clean race, we can see the real value of Ferrari now.
Which is why it's such good news. I say that in irony, that it's going to rain apparently all weekend.
Wow.
So I don't know if Spielberg will be the exact place to be able to judge the back-to-back comparisons.
If the weather is bad, it's not counterproof in any way.
Apparently dry on Sunday.
Oh.
Rain for Sunday,
you watch different website for the weather, I guess.
I'm just looking outside the window.
We never get a wet race in the end. Natasha, how do you read the Ferrari situation?
It's really hard from an outsider's perspective, because Obviously, Seb has been very vocal about his confusion when they announced how he found out about them not renewing his contract and how he feels about that contradicting the stories that are coming from Ferrari. I think Charles Leclerc has probably in terms of feeling comfortable in his team, in his car, he's going to have an easy season. Although as a future driver, there's a lot of expectation on him, but this season they've admitted the car isn't as good as Mercedes. It's going to be a case of do as well as you can do. And, you know, it was very much, it felt like mind over matter with him in the car at the weekend. I love watching him race. It was good to see him on the podium, and you can see a little battle start. There was a bit of a battle between him and Sainz midway through, which I really enjoyed, which will make next year very interesting. But I think, you know, Vettel, he'll be happy for Vettel to have all the media attention, everyone talking about him, let Charles get in his car, get on the podium, race his best race, and what he can achieve at the end of the season will be a bonus for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I found the whole dynamic between Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc fascinating last year, and it looks like the dynamic between Vettel and his car will be fascinating this year. Another one of those kind of trademark spins. He didn't look happy at all on Sunday, and then he went on TV on Monday evening and was, I suppose, very honest about what he felt. He spoke to Helmut Marko as soon as he got off the phone to Matteo Binotto, and you kind of think, is there life in the old dog yet? Is there a way that he could get back into the sport next year? Because doors are closing all around him. So what do you think? Let's start with Gianluca. Do you think Vettel will be in the sport next year?
Well, I'm not sure, because the way he reacted at the beginning when Ferrari let us know, everybody know that they were not going to confirm him for 2021. It was a kind of, between the lines, you could read Sebastian reflecting a lot, thinking about his future. But then we started to read about maybe Mercedes, maybe Aston Martin, well, Racing Point becoming Aston Martin, which is a kind of a possibility. We ruled out almost immediately Renault, but not for what can happen this week with another driver, but because Renault is not at the moment so competitive, and then you go. I don't think that Sebastian is going to face another 2 or 3 years in Formula One fighting for 7th, 8th place or whatever. But coming back to the Ferrari situation with him, which is pretty difficult now after what he said on Thursday before the race. I guess that Ferrari, in some way, they know that they will face a couple of seasons not so good with the car. So it's like if you take a big football team like, I don't know, Arsenal, Manchester United, Liverpool, and knowing that they can't be competitive, and then they say, okay, we do a young team, we work for the future. We can't have a 4-time world champion in the team with a car that cannot fight for the championship. So it was a kind of situation. They had only that way to go. If you think that for the next couple of years you will not fight for the world championship. So, and he found himself now in this situation with a teammate who's showed last year that it was maybe faster than him. They fought a lot between them. It's something that Binotto doesn't want to see anymore, but Leclerc has a future in Ferrari and Sebastian has not a future in Ferrari, maybe in Formula One. So he can fight to gain a position for next year, to find someone that trusts him to be fast. So he needs to show something. And on Sunday, unfortunately, he showed only what brought him in this situation. So he wasn't able to fight with another driver. He did a mistake like he did in last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And it makes you think if you want to make some a road with him, you have to pay him a lot. And it's another point that it's not in favor of Sebastian. So let's see what happens. Maybe Aston Martin with Mercedes engines. I'm not sure with Valtteri going this way that Mercedes will change his formation. So I'm curious like you.
Natasha, you are an Arsenal fan. I'm not getting this wrong,
I
am
am.
I? Yeah, I thought that was a wry smile on your face when that came up. But from your point of view, will Vettel, do you think, see out the year, or will he walk before?
I think he'll see out the year. He comes across as a very proud man, and that decision was taken out of his hands. So he will want to finish on his terms. I think the relationship between him and Charles last year, it reminded me of the big brother, little brother situation. Your little brother comes along, he's suddenly smarter than you, he's getting better grades than you, and you're looking at him and, you know, you want to shut him in the cupboard. I also wonder with Vettel, given his age, he's 33 now. His children are, I don't think they're even 10 yet. I wonder if he's really taking stock of his wider life, whether he wants to go and sign another 2-3 year contract and miss out on another 2-3 years of being with his children on a more regular basis. I think we forget sometimes sports people have families, you know, they travel so much, they're away from home. So like we're saying, would it be worth him going to a mid-table team and maybe getting one podium a season? He will feel he's better than that. And is it better to walk away at the top than, you know, crawl away from the bottom, I suppose?
Will?
Yes. The Sebastian that we saw on Sunday wasn't the 4-time world champion. You know, on a day when only 11 cars saw the finish, he got 9 retirements, he started 11th and he finished 10th. You know, having spun, he just never looked like his heart was in it. And it makes me really sad because Sebastian is one of the greats. You know, he's a 4-time world champion and at his best, he's a joy to watch. There's no joy in him at the moment. You know, he takes no satisfaction. You can see it in everything that he's doing. And I don't know how you get that back. Or even if he wants to get that back. It's, yeah, I don't know if we'll see him next year. The doors are closing left, right and center. If reports are to be believed, another door is closing this week, may have closed already for him. We're looking at just Aston Martin, but are Aston Martin going to get rid of either Sergio Perez, who brings a lot of money, even if you are Aston Martin, or is the boss going to fire his son? No. So that's not a possibility for him. I don't know where he ends up. And that's amazing. We're sitting here looking at a 4-time world champion and saying nobody wants him. Nobody. And I asked Toto Wolff on Friday, could we see the dream team? You know, these 2 world champions who have, you know, cut up the last decade between them. Could we see them as the ultimate dream team? He said, no, it's not going to happen. You know, we love Valtteri and everyone would like to see Seb and Lewis, but it's really not going to happen. So I think it's the end of the road for him. And that's a real shame that it has to end this way. But I think it will end, whether it ends before the end of the season. We've been seeing rumors that Renault might wish to move Daniel Ricciardo out early. If they do that, does Daniel go to McLaren and Carlos get released early to go to Ferrari and Seb is at home by the time that we go to Silverstone or Spain or the Italian Grand Prix at Monza? What a place for Sainz to make his debut. I don't know, but anything can happen in this strangest of years.
Wouldn't that be the ultimate disservice to Sebastian Vettel, as you say, a 4 times world champion, a really good guy? Whenever I've spoken to him, I really like him, but yet we could see him lose his seat partway through the season. And even then it wouldn't be him walking away. It would be him getting told, sorry, but actually we got to make room for everybody else, aka Fernando Alonso. I mean, it's just, it's just.
But I think Seb feels the disservice has already been done to him. He's an incredibly morally guided individual. You know, he can be ruthless in the car, but out of it, you know, you've seen it day in, day out, Jenny. He has this moral compass of the way in which people deal with each other. And I think he feels really hurt by the way things have gone down at Ferrari. And I think the love for him has gone now. You can sort of see it on his face. He spent almost the entire weekend at Red Bull's little enclave and actually had to get a warning about, you know, crossing bubbles, and he was in a bubble he wasn't supposed to be in. I just don't see the love in him anymore, either for what he's doing or for Ferrari. I think it's sad, but I think it's over.
And as we've all mentioned, Fernando Alonso coming back to Formula One for Renault. It's kind of like I want to pinch myself. I can't believe it's real. Gianluca, I mean, will Gazzetta dello Sport go big on the headlines?
Well, not today, because well, there are rumors that they are going to announce him on Wednesday. We spoke with Flavio Briatore this morning, and he said, no, it's not already done, but obviously it's done. But we have, but you know, the situation is something that makes you think about Fernando too, because Fernando is older than Sebastian. I guess that Renault as a company has a lot of problems now, post-pandemic, post-lockdown, with his economic situation, and I don't see Renault becoming a factor in the Formula One fight next year. And you have the same car as this year, so Fernando is going back like he was in 2008, 2009. That situation that you don't fight for the championship. He won a couple of races. One was in Singapore, and we knew what happened. It was not competitive. So I asked myself how you can go back just for you love Formula One, probably, or you don't find anything else to do, because he tried Indianapolis, and he will try it again in September. He tried the car, he tried the WEC, but nothing is like Formula One. We know it. I was wondering if he was trying to go to Aston Martin because the engine is better. There are some potential that you can see now in Renault, but Renault is his home in some way, because he won there. He had a lot of people that he knows, and maybe just to enjoy the place and try to do something. We'll see what happens. It's a kind of surprise, but it's even not a surprise knowing Fernando, that he loves to be there fighting with the drivers that he thinks obviously they are not good as him. So we'll see what he can do next year.
We are fast running out of time, but Natasha, Alonso, happy to see him coming back to the sport or not?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's addicted to the sport. I think you see it a lot in other sports. Mike Tyson talking about coming back to box at 57 or whatever it is. He has nothing else to do. But I think it's always great to have characters like that in any sport. And you think of F1, and if you tell someone to list 5 drivers, he's going to be one of those 5 modern drivers. He's going to come back. He's going to be Fernando Alonso, and whether he wins any races, he's going to give us a lot of good copy. I'm sure of that.
Now, one of the subjects I wanted to talk to you all about was what happened at the beginning of the race, before the race even got started. We had moments of reflection just before the national anthem, where the drivers did what they wanted to tackle diversity. They all wore end racism t-shirts, and previously to that, they'd issued a statement from the GPDA, which is their union in effect, to say that they all, no matter what happened, they all supported the cause, and they all want to help in any way they can to end racism. And then it came to the moment where they had this pause for reflection, and Natasha, it was Lewis Hamilton leading the way, and as I suppose many of us expected, he decided he would take the knee, and others did the same.
Yeah, I think one of the really important things to say is that there shouldn't be this pressure on people to take the knee. I personally have no issue whether you want to stand and have a moment of silence, if you want to take the knee. My only issue is, are you against racism? I think there seems to have been this kind of campaign that Lewis has been bullying people and preaching about the cause, and I don't think that's what's being done. I think he just wants people to recognize there's a problem, and he wants them to commit to joining him in this fight, however they feel they can contribute to the fight. I think that's the important thing. I respect anyone that chooses not to take the knee, as long as it's not because of, you know, wrong reasons, as in they don't want to end racism. I think Lewis this year, it's not just for him about being a historical figure in F1, it's about him being a historical figure in society. He's always been very vocal about things, but I've seen a difference in his words, in his manner, and obviously the investigations the group he's set up, the organization he's set up to investigate diversity in F1. F1 it is probably the most undiverse sport compared to something like skiing or horse racing. And a lot of that is to do with the financial issues, but it's also to do with people feeling as if they're not welcome. And I think what Lewis is trying to do, and I hope everyone joins him in this, is just have conversations. Let's talk about the problem. Let's see how we can all work to fix this. And let's not be accusatory about anyone or pointing people out. Let's all work together. And we all love the sport. We all want it to be reflective of us. We want it to be welcoming of everyone, regardless of your gender, your nationality, whether you're disabled or not. Everyone should be welcome. And I think that can only be a positive thing that he's leading this cause right now.
Will, when it comes to being there and seeing what was happening and getting the feeling of what happened after, what was the reaction to the drivers who didn't take the knee? So you're talking Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Kvyat, Leclerc, Sainz and Verstappen. And now they all made it clear they support the cause, but they chose that they didn't want to do that.
I think Natasha's put it brilliantly, actually, which is that whether they did or they didn't, the important thing is that they came together as 20 drivers to show solidarity with a drive to end racism in the sport, you know, and that's a hugely important message. You know, Formula One has been trying, you know, since Liberty came and took over, they put in a raft of measures at the end of last year to try and improve diversity within the company and within the paddock. You know, be that race, be that gender, to try and make Formula One less of a boys club, you know, if a white boys club, which is what it's been for so long. I think the important thing, as Natasha said, and as you said, is, you know, the solidarity shown by all 20 drivers together. That it wasn't that they didn't, you know, if somebody hadn't have turned up to that, that's a different question entirely. They didn't. They all showed up to support what is a massively important cause, not just within this sport, but within the world, and to promote having a conversation, listening, learning, educating all of ourselves. And I think to learn that, maybe, you know, something that I think a lot of us have learned is that we were naive in believing that not being racist is enough, you know, that if you're not actually trying to be part of the solution, you know, that's the important part. You know, simply saying, oh, well, it's, you know, I'm not a racist, so I'm okay. It's not the same thing as trying to be part of the solution. And yeah, I think it's great to see these drives towards putting the message out there, but having the discussion.
And Gianluca, I'm always intrigued to know when Lewis Hamilton does anything, what other countries think and feel, and what the fans think and feel. I mean, how did Italy, how did your paper kind of report what was happening at the time?
Well, in my opinion, what Natasha and Will said reflect what I think, and they are much more able to show you that what I can do, and I'm not English speaking, but I think Lewis did an amazing work in the last couple of months on this issue, and we were not surprised, because we compared him in some way during these weeks with Muhammad Ali, because he stand up with no fear, thinking about other people. I can't stand people saying, you are privileged, you live in Monaco. It's bullshit, because It's what you can speak for a lot of other people, and he's doing this, and it is not thinking about my career. I'm winning, I'm not winning, what I can do after this Formula One years. He's standing up for people that can't speak, and he's doing it in a very brave way, and even in a very respectful way, because he said it's not a problem if some drivers doesn't knee before the race. It's okay. I respect them. It's not. I don't want everyone do what I do. Very respectful way, but very strong way. And he's taking some risk in doing what he did. And we really appreciate a lot of what he did in these weeks. And we did a cover of our weekly with him. And the headline was a leader, because he is really a leader. And Formula One, the drivers, because Leclerc 1 month ago did the tweet after Lewis asked the other drivers to do something, and Charles did it immediately. And in some way, Formula One followed him. The entire organization followed what Lewis tried to do. So it's really it's big. We always think about young drivers. They don't think about politics or society. It's not true. These people are going at 16 years old. They go in all the world, different countries. They meet important people. They grow up. And when you find the courage to stand for a very important and delicate matter, it's really, we appreciate it. And I guess the enthusiasts, the fans, even who's not a Lewis fan, was impressed.
Yeah, Natasha?
I think I keep seeing comments about how can Lewis Hamilton know what discrimination is? He doesn't pay tax. He earns X amount of millions per year, per week, per month, whatever it is. And I think people need to stop coming with that narrative. Yes, Lewis may be privileged, but he also knows if he didn't have the privilege of F1, he could be the young guy that is persecuted because of his skin color. If he didn't have the success that he's achieved and that he's worked very hard for. So in his eyes, he's looking around and he's seeing things that are going on, and he's seeing, as I do, as many others do, he's seeing his brother, his cousin. So when people are angry that this multi-millionaire sportsman is fighting for diversity and inclusion, he's fighting for others. And I think that's a far more noble cause than just fighting for ourselves.
Very well put indeed. We are running out of time. So I want to thank you all for all your contributions today. You're all such amazing speakers and so passionate about our sport that I want to find out what your predictions are, please. So let's go Will, then Natasha, then Gianluca.
If it stays dry, I think we'll see a much cleaner final 10 in qualifying, because a number of the guys didn't get their chance after Valtteri went off. I think Ferrari will struggle again, and I think they'll struggle to get anywhere near to a podium. I don't know. I think Red Bull versus Mercedes for the win. I think Lewis will probably be back on form, but I would not bet against Valtteri. I think he's got a little something this year. So I want to see that. George Russell in the points, and a good fight between McLaren and Racing Point.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a Max v Lewis show again. Maybe even a Lewis, Max and Valtteri sandwich on the podium. But Max is going to be very, very keen to get back on the podium this week after last weekend. And I think the Racing Points will finish a little bit higher. I was really impressed with both drivers, and I think they're going to take a lot of lessons from Sunday's race.
Gianluca?
Yeah. Well, I think that Lewis will not make the same mistake in the same race 7 days later. So I see him on pole and going for the win. I expect Max Verstappen to be much more a factor. Last Sunday, if reliability was good, Red Bull would have fought until the end with him. So I expect a fight between them. Obviously, Will is right. If Valtteri is on a roll, so we can see immediately if Valtteri is a contender for the championship.
I can't believe none of you are going for Lando Norris. It's a revelation.
We didn't even talk about Lando.
I know. There's been so much to talk about. Yeah, boy did good, hey? Lando was great.
He's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Right, I've taken up so much of your time. Thank you to all of you, and let's hope for another fantastic race and as many more of these great races as we can cram into the rest of the year. Stay safe, stay well. Will, when is your next nasal swab?
Thanks for bringing that up, Jenny. Thursday. Yay.
Thursday. As I said, take care, guys. Thank you all so much for being part of it. To Will Buxton, Natasha Henry, and Gianluca Gasparini, thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye. Ciao.
Thanks, Jenny. Bye.